Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I'm going to break with tradition a little bit. Normally I talk about current events or whatever in the fitness world, sports world, all of that stuff at the end of the day after I've done two other informative videos. But something really big has come out, and I just feel like talking about it first thing this morning instead. So let me put on my +5 out of weaponsmithing, work on skilling up my crafting a little bit, and let's talk about this. And this one's interesting because you guys know I jumped in on the whole Rich Piana thing, and there were actually people who said, I was just looking for racism out there, just looking for examples of racism, and I really am not. I'm actually not one of those people. But the whole Rich Piana thing, what was the difference? Rich Piana used the N-word over and over and over in an angry rant, even said black in bitch. Talked about that his ex-wife, because a black man kissed her on the cheek, that she should hang herself because he was disgusted. Okay, come on guys. That's about as racist of a conversation as a person could possibly have. That's just straight up racism. Alright, I don't see how anyone could even argue otherwise unless they're just trying to be controversial or being a fan of Piana. But the situation we've got with Conor McGregor versus Mayweather, this big fight that's coming up, and I'll talk a little bit about how it doesn't even matter if Conor wins or not. He's set for life. He is so set. But this is an example of people making something out of nothing, and they expect everyone around the world to understand our insular society in the United States. I love America. I'm very pro-American. I'm very pro-patriotic, but when you expect every other culture on earth to understand all the nuances of our history, you're a moron. You are a moron if you honestly believe that everyone's supposed to know that. Yeah, most people who get over here would understand that saying the N-word is probably racist. They probably shouldn't do it. Of course, it creates confusion when they hear other black people saying it, and that throws some people off. And that is an observation I've noted from people who are immigrants. They don't understand that. But they at least understand they're not supposed to say it. They figure that out real quick. But the thing is, you've got Conor McGregor, who called Mayweather a boy and said he's going to make him dance for him. And people are saying, oh, that's racism, that's racist. And even when people are saying, look, he's Irish, he might not get the historical connotation because it isn't used anymore in that way. It hasn't been used in a long time, and someone who hasn't read maybe Huckleberry Finn or seen the movie Roots probably isn't aware of the historical connotation of that, particularly someone from another country. All right, there's a very good probability he doesn't understand that there's any historic racist connotation there of a white guy calling a black guy boy. Furthermore, we're dealing with something a little bit different. I mean, if we want to go into a real context, we're talking about people who were here who owned slaves. He's also Irish. He's not exactly from a line of people who even related to people who would have owned slaves over here. People need to understand that too. You're looking at there's more than one type of white person. People maybe don't grasp this. And people are saying, well, there's racism in Ireland. Actually, the Irish, if we want to talk about white supremacy, either historically in the United Kingdom or even in the United States, Irish people have never benefited from any form of white supremacy. All right, they are basically treated like, in certain places, they have been historically treated almost as bad as black people. They've been treated with subjugation. They've been treated as if they were inferior. Open a history book, guys. The Irish were subjugated for centuries by the English. Okay, subjugated by them, made pretty much into slaves, pretty close to. Not quite, but real close to being slaves. They were second-class citizens, treated probably no better historically for centuries than, say, black people were treated 100 years ago in the United States. Okay, that has been their historical treatment. And that's where he grew up. That's his culture. Same thing here in the U.S. Irish people, when they were coming across, were used oftentimes as indentured servants. You guys familiar with the term, white slavery or Irish slavery? It exists for a reason. Irish people were treated about one step better than black people. And we know how bad black people were treated. All right? They were treated about one step better. So not very good. So you don't even have a historical context in his country for white supremacy or his particular people being feeling superior or being treated superior in any way to anyone, okay? He has no historical context from his culture for that. So people need to get over that silly nonsense and the idea that, oh, you know, he doesn't even come from a country with a history of white supremacy in the sense that people think of it. So context there. Now, as far as all of that goes, what is it? It's just normal trash talking. Telling someone you're going to dance for me, and then some people are like, well, how dare he say that to him? Like, you know what? This is someone who doesn't come from a country with the sort of history you have. He wouldn't realize that there's any problem, all right, that anyone would think of. And you know what? I'm sorry, telling someone you're going to make them dance for them in a boxing ring or whatever, that's standard trash talk. That's not ethnic or racial in nature. That is standard trash talk. And you know what, people? This is one of the biggest hyped up fights that I've ever seen. It's been massively hyped up. It's millions and millions of dollars on the line. In fact, I think Conor's been promised $20 million even if he loses. Isn't that right? Right, this has been majorly hyped up. And then people want to take the trash talk and the hype that's going to go around it, and then they want to turn it into some sort of racism thing. You know, this almost reminds me, you guys remember that movie, The Great White Hype? What was the guy's name? Irish Terry McConklin. Of course, he wasn't really Irish. It's almost like people want to make this into that. It almost seems like that's what people want this fiasco to turn into. And it is. It really is. If you step back and look at it, that's almost what we're trying to see. Now everyone wants to make it a race thing, when it's not. People are like, oh, he's racist because he told some other guy, some Hispanic dude, that he was a cholo from the ghetto. He's just using terms he's learned over here. And you know what? If someone's from the ghetto and you want to call him out being from the ghetto, that's your prerogative. So what? So what? That's not racism. I don't think people understand what the word racism means anymore. I think people need to open up a book and look up the definition of the word. I don't think they understand it. You get on the internet, people make things into racism that actually isn't. Actually disliking a culture or even a subculture within your own community isn't exactly racism. Not the same thing. And saying that someone's from the ghetto, or are they from the ghetto? I don't know. I don't know the history of the guy. If you call someone out from where they're from, then by all means. But, you know, people do the same thing the other direction. They'll say, oh, that person, you're some redneck from the country, from the boonies. Is that racist? There's no difference. There's no difference at all. Unless you want to count that as racist, then there's no difference. And again, people say, yeah, but, you know, McGregor is white. Yeah, but he doesn't come from a group of white people who have a history of white supremacy. He comes from a group of white people who've been treated like crap historically by other white people. Context. Context. Context is everything. Now, as far as the fight itself goes, you know what? I think Conor's got the right to talk more trash, and here's why. Restrictions have been placed in the fight. Conor McGregor is an MMA fighter. He's a martial artist. Now he's going to go in and they're going to have to follow basically boxing rules because Mayweather isn't a fighter. He's a boxer. Okay? He's used to having a lot of restrictions that would never exist in any sort of real fist fight or any sort of real conflict. And because he's not skilled and well versed in a wide variety of fighting styles, he's only really skilled in his one fighting style. That's where his expertise lies. He's putting restrictions in place to take McGregor out of his element and force McGregor to use one very limited style of fighting, fisticuffs, boxing, whatever you want to call it. And because of that, McGregor has every right in the world to make fun of him and call him kind of a coward. He doesn't want to have a standard MMA fight. He wants to make it boxing against an MMA fighter. And you know what? Conor's accepted. And you know, here's the reality of it. Even if he loses, he saves face because he got taken away from his standard style of fighting, which he's an expert in, into a more limited form under rules he's not always used to fighting under, not using all of his skill set. So if he loses, there's no shame in his game for that because he loses in something that isn't necessarily his expertise. That would be like Shaquille O'Neal challenging J.J. Watt to a basketball game. And J.J. Watt losing and then saying, well, you know what though, this basketball's not really my game. I play something similar called football, so it's no big deal, but I'll take that $20 million. And there's what's really up. McGregor wins no matter what. Now, he very well might win in the boxing, and if he does, then he's got every right to clown Mayweather. Why wouldn't he? Because Mayweather is a boxer. And McGregor's an MMA fighter, and he comes in, and if he wins, that's going to make a total fool out of Mayweather. But if McGregor loses, he gets $20 million. This is a man who, it wasn't that long ago, less than a decade ago, he was only making a few $1,000s per fight, even to win, right? He's about to get $20 million, even if he loses. He is set for the rest of his life off of this fight. All right, this fight, he can live comfortably if he's smart with his money, invest it smartly. The $20 million alone he's going to make off of this fight is going to put him into a comfort of living to where he will never have to lift another finger, never fight, never work, never do anything he doesn't want to do the rest of his life if he so chooses. So you know what? Anyone who wants to call him out for whatever, it doesn't matter, because he's going to laugh his way all the way to the bank. He's already won. He's already won. And it is what it is. Alright guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.